So thank you for attending Preparing for the MCAT. My name is Stephanie Soto. I'm the Assistant Director of Testing and Academic Success here at the Tutoring and Testing Center. And today I have with me
Hi, everyone. My name is John V. I'm a current senior at NSU, and I took the MCAT last year. I took it twice in both July and in August. So I'm just here to kind of assist Stephanie with this presentation and assist you guys with any questions you might have.
All right, so let's jump right in. So your first step in MCAT preparation is to download this MCAT Essentials Testing Guide. It's issued every single year, and every single year there's very slight changes. So make sure you have the most up-to-date guide. Right now it has all of the new information for the 2021 year. So make sure you're downloading that one, not the 2020. This is the schedule of the MCAT dates that are happening for the 2021 year. You might notice that a couple months are missing. So February, there's absolutely no testing dates in February. October, missing completely. So when you are planning for your test dates, make sure you're looking at the schedule ahead of time and you're not planning for a month where there's no tests. You also want to plan. So if you have a deadline in mind where you need to take the exam by, make sure that you have enough space that you can take the exam more than one time, because the majority of students take it at least 2 times. So if you are taking it more than one time, there are some restrictions. So you can only hold one MCAT exam appointment at a time. You can register once you complete your first MCAT exam, but you have to wait 2 days. And then you can't attempt the exam more than 3 times in a testing year. So that's just an important note. Avoided exam does count towards that. So another thing to note. And then here are the pricing for the 2021 year. So right now for January and March, the exam is $320. They're not charging a rescheduling or cancellation fees, but come April, they are going to start doing that once again. So something to keep in mind. If you are scheduling a month out and then closer to the date, you realize you need to change around a few things, there is a fee associated with that. And the exam is pretty costly. So it's definitely something to consider, especially if you're taking it 2 times, that price does add up. The MCAT, the AAMC actually offers a fee assistant program. So if you qualify, definitely recommend to go in and apply and see if you qualify. It can decrease the price down quite a bit. So you're only paying $130 for the exam. And it also comes with some study guide materials that are completely free. So highly recommend, if you can qualify, do apply for this program. All right, so going into test day. John B, can you talk about what your test day experience was like?
Yeah, so I don't know how many of you guys are planning to take the MCAT soon, but I'm not sure if they still have so I took it the COVID time, I took it this past summer. So they had 3 different start times. One was around 6:15 a.m., one was at noon, and one was around 6 p.m., I believe. So it kind of just depends on which, like if you're a morning person, I mean, I took the 6:15 one. And basically, I think it's really important for you to plan your studying time and your schedule prior to the test date around that time that you start. So if you start at 6:15, setting your sleep schedule early so that you don't walk into the test kind of groggy and not yet awake. I think that's really important. And then also, so here it says finding the test center early. Yep, that's super important. And I would also recommend that whatever test center you have, some buildings are sometimes really big and have many entrances. So I recommend kind of going inside the building and scoping it out. And I'm sure there's some staff there on at the place. So like you can also talk to them and say, like on my test date, hi, my name is John V and I'm testing in a couple weeks. I'm just wondering, how will the test date look like? So that's also a good idea to do. And then the check-in process. So like the second for me, for my MCAT both times. So every time you go there, they do take like a scan of your whole hand, and they'll take, I think, like your fingerprint and the scan of the whole hand. And you can't bring your cell phone. You can't use your cell phone at all. So they'll give you a locker. I think they'll put your cell phone in a bag and all your other belongings. You can bring food to eat in your breaks. But they also say that you should not, if you can leave your cell phone in the car with your parents or at home, that's probably better, because if they do see you, if they think you're even looking at your cell phone, they could disqualify your test, which is not something you would want, right? I actually have a friend who he took the MCAT. He was taking summer classes at the time, and he accidentally like it didn't, I don't know. He was like, they thought he was looking at a textbook for one of his online classes, which was like an ecology class. So nothing even related to the MCAT. They disqualified his test. So just advice is don't bring things that you don't need for the test, So just, and they'll give you like you don't even need pencils. So I know for the ACT, SAT, you guys remember taking that, you have to bring all your number 2 pencils sharpened and everything. This is a completely computerized test, so don't need to bring any pencils whatsoever. They'll provide you like a whiteboard kind of sheet with a marker. And if your marker runs out and if you need more paper, it's not really paper, it's like a whiteboard sheet, then you raise your hand and they come and give it to you. So really you don't need to bring anything besides your ID and water bottle and anything. I mean, I brought a cup of coffee because I run on coffee, so that was important for me. But also, don't do anything different on your test day than you would do on a normal day. So if you're going to drink coffee between this section and that section, plan it during your practice test, because one of my friends, she on the test day, she was like, I'm going to be sleepy, like I'm going to bring so much coffee. Her heart rate was just beating because she didn't practice with drinking that much coffee on the day. So really replicate your exact test day for your practice test, and your sleep schedule. Try to really get into that habit before the test. And then also healthy food is important too. So like I know for me, carbs kind of slow me down. So I had 3 bananas on my test day. So during every single break, I would just have a whole banana. And that worked for me. I would drink some water, but it's really up to you, whatever works better for your body. And then for an outfit, yes, I really recommend, wear a t-shirt, but bring like a sweater on top. So you don't know what the testing center is going to be like. And sometimes when you're more nervous, I know for me, if I'm more nervous, my heart is beating, I get kind of hot easily. So I was really happy that I brought a sweater. I was able to take that off and just wear my short sleeve shirt. So, just bring whatever, as many layers as you can in case you need them, in case you need to take them off. Just bring what you can. And then of course, like comfy pants and, whatever works best for you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to know quickly, can you hear me well?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to know, how long is this test?
Oh, we'll definitely go over that. We're going to go through a breakdown of each section, how long it is, and then the total exam. But it is quite a lengthy exam. Mm-hmm. John V mentioned this kind of whiteboard kind of material. It's wet erase pages that you'll be provided. This is an image of that you'll be provided by the testing center. So if you are practicing, it's good to maybe practice with a marker, because it's not something that you can easily erase or anything, but writing with a marker, seeing it kind of more bolded, writing on only a certain amount of space and then flipping it over. So you're working with multiple pages as you go back and forth between the questions. How are you going to organize your notes? Try to do that when you do a practice exam. And then most centers also provide earplugs. So sometimes those are larger noise canceling headphones. Most places around Florida, that's what they are. So when you are taking a practice exam, you might want to practice with headphones, because it is something that can be a distraction if you've never done it before. If you receive any testing accommodations currently, the MCAT Accommodations online system does have an application where you can submit all qualifying documentation to get similar accommodations on the MCAT. So it's important to do that early because it can take up to 2 months to get approved. All right, so we're gonna jump right into the exam structure itself. There is 4 sections of the MCAT, and we're gonna kind of go through each one individually. So the first one, Chemical and Physical Foundations of Biological Systems. So this has 59 questions. It's a combination of 10 passage-based sets. So it'll be a lengthy reading and then questions that are associated, and then 15 discrete questions, so basic multiple choice questions. For this, you'll have 95 minutes. So John B., was this kind of what you expected? How did you prepare for this section?
Right. So this was my favorite section. I love chemistry. And the thing is, like, as you guys see in this test section, it says chemical and physical foundations of biological systems. So you've got chemical, physical, and biological. Okay. So what that means is that you can get chemistry, you can get anything physics, and you can get any biochem, anything. So I think like this, the percentage breakdown that you see here, that's roughly what you'll see, but don't be surprised and don't be thrown off if you don't get that breakdown. Because for me, the first time on my exam, I had so much physics, and the second time on my exam, 1 question of physics. So it's very variable. So it's something that, yes, this is a good way to look at it when you're going into the exam. Like, this is roughly what you'll see, but don't get thrown off if you start to get biochemistry and a very biochemistry heavy section, and you're like, where's the physics? Where's the general chemistry? Where's the organic chemistry? So it can vary a lot. But for me, I really like this section because I would say a lot of it was like formula based. So you guys have taken Gen Chem 1, Gen Chem 2, Physics 1, Physics 2. A lot of those formulas that you use in class are also the similar ones that you'll need to know for the MCAT. Now, the thing for the MCAT, though, is in class for your Gen Chem 1, Gen Chem 2, usually if your professor is friendly, gives you like a formula sheet. And every single section you have on a test, you have a certain few formulas you have to memorize, but for the MCAT, you don't get the formulas. So that is something to keep in mind for this section. Is it's a lot of memorizing formulas. And for me, actually, what worked was the second I got this section, before I even read the first question, I just said, like, I just did a quick little prayer in my head, and then I wrote down the formulas that I know that I was a little bit iffy on. And what I would recommend also is when you're studying for your MCAT, like, make a formula sheet for yourself. And I did that as well for this section specifically. I would make the chemistry formulas, the physics formulas, the biochem formulas, and I would study those and like make flashcards and review those every day. Because like I said, you don't get the formulas on the test. That's something that you need to have in your brain, right? So the second that I opened I pressed start on the exam, I quickly wrote down the ones that I know that I'm not too, that I might not remember off the top of my head. And this actually helped me because a few of them did show up on my exam. And another thing for this section is you do not get a calculator on the MCAT. And as you guys remember from general chemistry 2 and some of physics, it is a lot of math, right? So if you have an equation that's like Q equals MC delta T, for example, in class, we're used to using the calculators to plug in those numbers. And I feel like our society and schooling has become so calculator heavy, but you do not get a calculator on the MCAT. So be like, prepare with doing the mental math in your head. And also, I mean, you have the sheet, like we mentioned, you have that binder, the spiral with the marker to kind of write out your numbers. But that's something that I kind of like, that I struggled with a little bit, is because I was so not used to doing mental math. So that's something to really practice on, because a lot of these questions are they go fast. You can't stay hung up on, if you have one question where you don't know, you can't just stare at it. The answer is not going to come to you from the higher powers above. I used to think that. I was just like, what will the answer be? But you got to move fast and you got to move on. So doing that mental math fast and efficiently is super important. And then also reviewing your rounding skills. So when you guys do the questions, this will make more sense. But if you round down for the answer, like if you have 385 divided by 26. You can kind of round that to 400 divided by 30. But if you do that, you got to be sure, like, will the actual answer be less than or greater than what I just rounded? So it's kind of having those patterns in your head are extremely important. So, and you could get no calculations on your exam, but like I said, very variable, you could get a lot of calculations. So the best way to go about this section for practice wise is practice questions. So this is the section I did really well, and this was my top section, I believe. And all I did for this was really just a repetition, bunch of practice questions over and over and over again, memorize the formulas, practice with calculations, and then know the concepts from I use Kaplan books, so knowing the concepts from those are really important. And also there's some videos on YouTube. I can find the name and type it in the chat later, but it's some guy who he goes through some of the main concepts that are on the MCAT with physics and chemistry, and that also really helped. So this section is honestly very, very improvable. So if this is your low section before, this section you can improve on a lot, because it's a lot of just repetition, in my opinion. And then also pacing wise, so like we mentioned, 59 questions, 15 discrete questions, 95 minutes. So the discrete ones are typically, they're just going to be like, oh, the only question on the screen, you'll see that. So you kind of either know it or you don't. Now the passage based questions, the thing is, you'll get a question, but a lot of the values you need. So for example, if you're doing like an equation, it's not going to tell you the mass is this, the temperature is this, find Q. The MCAT is not straightforward like that. They're not super friendly. So we're going to have to look at the passage and read through, like knowing how to read through the passage efficiently and find the values that you do need, because the passage will give you a lot of extra stuff that is not even relevant. Okay. So it's important to kind of, not get thrown off by that. So you don't need to read every single word and understand every single thing that's in the passage. You need to be able to dissect what is the question trying to ask me, what values do I need from this, what graph do I look at, and how do I efficiently answer the question. Because timing was a big problem for me. So I'm just mentioning it for you guys, because in the beginning I used to try to read the passage and be like, okay, like line by line, and then by the time I had the questions, I didn't even have time for that passage. So that was a mistake I made. So it's really important to just breeze through the passage, dissect what you need, move on, and knowing the formulas will definitely help. Knowing the formulas, knowing those concepts, and then going from there.
All right, the next section is the CARS, the critical analysis and reasoning skills. It's 53 questions. They are all passage based. So you'll have 9 different passages and you have 90 minutes for this section. So it is really reading heavy and very important to keep your timing on everything. So John B, how did you prepare for this section?
Right, so this was my lowest section. I for some reason just had a lot of heightened anxiety with this section, because I knew the first time this was the section that was really low on my end. So the second time I, tried to improve, but a lot of this CARS is a lot of, as like I said with chemistry or the first section, it's a lot of repetition. So there's like the question makers, they have certain, I think there's like 6 types of questions that you'll get. Well, so these are the main foundations of comprehension: reasoning within the text and reasoning beyond the text. Those are the 3 main categories. And I believe within those categories, there's like some specific question styles that they'll ask you. And I would say doing a lot of practice with it, and kind of annotating every single question that you do for CARS. Annotating, like, even if you get it right or you get it wrong, look at answer choice A, B, C, and D and say, like, what was A trying to do? A was trying to use words from the passage, but it was trying to throw me off. What was B trying to do? B was looking at B was the opposite answer from what the question was asking me. So it was like, maybe if someone read the question wrong, they would have chosen B. So it's kind of like looking back after you answer every single question, going through A, B, C, and D, and seeing, like, why did the test maker put that answer choice, if that makes sense? Because there's a reason that they put that answer choice, and that's, in a way, it is to throw you off. Like, it's not a friendly test. It's not super straightforward, but it is, once you identify the A, B, C, and D, why they're trying to throw you in that direction, you'll do the question and you'll be like, oh no, you can't trick me. Like I know this, like I practice this. So it's something that I would say a lot of repetition. And then also with like reading, I don't know. I mean, I'm a slower reader. And I think when I was first starting out with cars, I thought that I needed to kind of read every single line and like really understand it. And I would only move on to the next sentence once I like really, really understood the sentence. But what are the chances that the like there's only 5 to 6 questions or per passage, so what are the chances that that one line out of this whole thing is going to be asked in a question? You might not even need to know what that, if you're stumbled upon a word or this sentence doesn't make sense, they might not even ask you about it in the questions, right? So there's no, I think when you're reading the passage, just like if you don't get it, if you don't get a line, move on, right? So you're, the thing with cars is they're trying to ask you the main idea of the passage. So don't get too kind of like hung up on the details. But when I was approaching cars, I would highlight highlight some main words. I would highlight the dates in case they ask me in the questions. I could go back to that. But for preparation wise, it's really the same thing: practice, 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 and then also looking back and kind of annotating the A, B, C, and D answer choices, and why was this wrong? Why was this right? Even if you get the question right, even if you got a 5 out of 5 on the passage, I would still go back and look at like each answer choice. And then humanities and social sciences. So it says 50-50. This could also vary. So these are these are just like estimates. So I think on my first MCAT, I got a lot of humanities. My second one, it was almost all social sciences, right? So it could very much vary. So it's important to kind of go through both of them. And then timing is really important in cars as well. So like I said, what will help with that is not getting hung up on every sentence in the passage, just reading it for that main idea, for the author's tone, and then going to the questions and then referring back to the passage as needed.
The next section is your biological and biochemical foundations of living systems. It is 59 questions, a combination of 10 passage-based questions, 10 passage-based, and then 15 discrete questions. It's 95 minutes again. So John V, if you could share, how did you prepare for this section?
Yep. So I'm a public health major, so I didn't take too much. I didn't take anatomy. I didn't take genetics. I really didn't take a lot of the sciences. So if you're in the same boat, like don't fret. A lot of the content you need to know for this section, I used the Kaplan book. I know some people use Princeton Review. I really liked the Kaplan book. It had, everything you really need to know was in that book content wise. The thing with this section is it's very experiment based. So what I mean by that is there'll be like a passage and they'll say, like we were looking at the algae growth using this medium versus that medium, and the scientist A proposed this, scientist B proposed that. So it's very experiment based. So it's not going to be like the first section where it's like more plug and chug formulas, dissect only what you need in the passage. In this section, it's very important to kind of look at the hypothesis, like what happened in the experiment, what was the control variable, what were the independent variables, and what was a dependent variable. Like kind of, because it's experiment based, kind of knowing that and identifying that as you read the passage is really important. But again, this section is a lot of content. So I would say like I really focused on the content for this because like I said, it wasn't something that I knew at the back of my head. So focusing on the content and then also looking at what the passage is telling you with the experiment. Now, a lot of these bio questions for this section, a lot of it is experiment based. So the good thing with that is like the really highly experiment based questions, you might not even need to know the content. So like a question could ask you, in experiment number 2, what was the dependent variable? And in that case, you kind of need to know the experimental design, right? So it's not something that will directly test you with a lot of facts. Now, the 15 discrete questions are typically pretty specific. So an example would be like, oh, when you're in the heart, the aortic valve or the mitral valve, which one supplies blood to this? So you either kind of know it or you don't. So for those 15 discrete questions, the Kaplan book is really the holy grail that was for my opinion. And then the passage-based questions, really being familiar with experimental design, like I mentioned. And then for this section, there's actually, I would recommend for all of the entire MCAT, the AAMC question bank or question pack, it's section bank and question pack. Those are included in the AAMC bundle if you guys choose to purchase that. It has practice exams, and then it has a section bank and the question pack. And the section bank for this specific section, the section bank is very very similar to what the actual test looks like. So I really think the section bank is a really good resource for this section. As well as the Kaplan book. And then also, like all other sections, like I said, practice, repetition, that really helps a lot. And then timing for this section, it's also timing for the whole MCAT is a little bit tight. You can't really leisure through all the passages, but it's also the same thing as before, kind of dissecting what it is you need. So what I would do for this section, when I would read the passages, I would look at the experiment, I would highlight the hypothesis. If you increased the glucose concentration, it looked like the muscle rate of something also increased. And then if that muscle rate of something increased, cellular respiration increased as well. If cellular respiration increased, the concentration of glucose decreased. Like, it's kind of like drawing that variable, like increase, decrease, increase, decrease. So that's like something that with practice you'll get a little bit faster at, instead of, like I used to do, kind of read the entire passage, one line by one line, taking my time. That typically doesn't help, because then you only have 95 minutes for all of these questions. So that's just also, practice makes perfect.
Mhm. All right, and the last one, psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior. This one is also 59 questions, a combination of passage and discrete. It's 95 minutes as well. So Johnvi, how did you prepare for this section?
So in my opinion, this is the most straightforward section on the MCAT. This is also the one, I think everyone will agree with me that it's the easiest, every test taker, easiest to improve your score on. So this section is like, don't take this lightly, because this one, it's not as tricky in my opinion. So it's a lot of definitions, but it's also like the patterns are a little bit easier to pick up on than the patterns for other sections. So I would say, like, this section, a lot of it is vocab, knowing the different vocab words like associative learning and, the symptoms of schizophrenia. Like, it's a lot of memorization. So flashcards help a lot with this section. And then I don't know if you guys have heard of this web-based, I personally don't like it, but a lot of people swear by this. It's called Anki. It's repetition flashcards. And it's a system you can download on your Mac or your PC, or I think on your phone. If you have an Android, I think it's free. But so it's basically, every single day you do a certain set of cards, and it just repeats itself like every single day. And you mark the terms as either like really good or like average or needs more work or something like that. And it just repeats itself. So a lot of people use Anki for definitions for the entire MCAT, but since this section is very definition heavy, I would recommend like a flashcard basis if you want. And then also practice questions. But like I said, a lot of it is definitions. The best resource for this actually is Khan Academy has a website where they have like an MCAT platform, and they have these videos for every single psych soc concept that you need to know is covered in those videos. So I watched every single video, and I scored a 130 on this section, which it's out of 132. And I was super surprised I got that, but I'm not the brightest person in the world. I definitely need to work hard to do well. And if I can do well, I'm sure you guys can do well on this section too, because it's very, very much like your hard work for this section will correspond to a good score, in my opinion. So watching those Khan Academy videos, and also doing, with every other section, doing the practice questions, and like a lot of these passages are typically a little bit shorter than the other passages. They're a little bit less straining to read. So they're more, they're, you know, you can kind of skim through the passage and get to the questions. And this one, timing usually isn't too big of a concern for most people. So, and it's at the end of the test. So, you know, you feel a little bit calmer. The anxiety level is typically a little bit lower. So I think this section is definitely the easiest to improve on. But the Khan Academy videos, I think, are the way to go. I didn't even touch my Kaplan book for this section. I had the whole Kaplan book set, but I found the videos were the most helpful. And then also, if you go on, I think there's something called MCAT Bros, and they have a document. It's like 100 something pages, or there's a shortened document, it's 100 pages, and there's a full document that's 300 pages. And it's basically people who watched the Khan Academy videos on this section, every single video, and they took notes on it. So that really helps. But I also recommend you guys to watch the videos yourself and take your own notes. Using someone else's notes, great, but taking your own notes, I think, is the best. It probably will put it in your head a little bit more. So yeah, that's my opinion for this section.
John V, when you can you please link these videos? These all sound very great to use.
Yes, I can. Yep. I'll go ahead and do that. Yep.
All right, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And for everyone here today, if you wouldn't mind just putting your email in the chat so we can send up a follow-up email with all of the links and everything that you can look at later on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so John B mentioned the questions are not straightforward a lot of times. What they use is called scientific inquiry and reasoning skills. That's what they're really trying to look for, is not that you know just the definition of something, but you know how to analyze it, you know how to make connections, you know how to demonstrate your understanding. So the biggest way to prepare for questions like this is practice. So the more practice exams that you can do, the more practice questions that you can find, the more you'll be able to approach these questions in the correct way. So just kind of an example of that. This is a practice questions from the biology section. And you can see it's using that skill 1 from the SIRS, so that you have to identify a similarity rather than just the basic definition. So you can kind of see as you're doing practice questions that they're going to look for more than just, do you know it, but can you actually analyze and evaluate it and make those kind of connections. This is an example from the chemistry section. So skills 3 question. To answer this, you have to use reasoning skills to determine what parameters will eliminate the complication. And we're going to have some practice questions at the end that you can attempt yourself. The exam is quite lengthy. It is pretty much a full day exam. So that's something you definitely need to take in consideration when you're practicing for the exam, that you need to build up that endurance so that you can sit for a 7.5-hour exam. Not everyone takes 7.5 hours, but you need to make sure that you are prepared to take as much time as you need for each section. So we went over, most of the sections are 95 minutes, except for the cars being only 90. The questions are usually 59 questions, except for the car being 53. There are breaks in between every section. Your longest break will be your mid-exam break. So John B, what did you do during that time to kind of give yourself a reset?
So I went to the bathroom first and foremost. Every single break, I would make sure I use the restroom, because like you can go during the test, I believe, but it's going to cut out your time. So you don't want to do that. I think I just, ate, I like closed my eyes a little bit. I think it's hard to not think of like the previous 2 sections, or, it's hard to not be like, oh, I wonder, if I didn't know 5 questions, is that going to be a 130 or is that going to be a 129? Like, of course I was doing all that, and that's normal to do. But it's not beneficial is all I want to say to you guys. Like, it's after you take the section and after you're halfway through the test, you don't want to you don't want to think back and be like, I wonder if I got a 129 on this one. Like, now like I better kill bio because I don't think I did good on the first half. Like there's no point in that. It's not going to impact your score. The universe is not going to change your answers for you, sadly. So, it's something to kind of like reset and just to close your eyes and be like, okay, I'm a new person for this next section now. You really need to practice, like in your practice test, just pretend the first half of the test just didn't even exist and just with a clean slate move on. Again, you can't use your phone or anything. So it's kind of just like you. And, I would recommend not talking to anybody in your testing center. I just feel like that, I mean, you're not supposed to, and you can get in trouble if you do talk to someone about a test question. So you don't want to do that, but also like, why do that? It's unnecessary. You can't change your answers anyway. And it's just stressful. So, just keep to yourself, just if you're a spiritual person, like if that's, something that you want to do. But I think the most important thing is to kind of reset and to not think about the previous sections at all.
Mhm. And it is a very long exam, so we do recommend to actually take those breaks. You had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, are we allowed to leave the testing center and just walk around and just refresh? Okay.
No. Yeah, you're not allowed to leave the testing center at all. So you have to stay nearby. You can access your locker during those break time only. If you need to take a break in the middle of a section, you can do that only to go to the restroom, but that's going to eat up your time. So you want to use those breaks strategically.
I also wanted to know, just curious, what was that void question that was 3 minutes?
Oh yeah, so you do have the option, if it was just a terrible testing experience, that you can void the entire exam, meaning you won't see the score, none of the schools will see the score. It will seem scary when that goes up on the screen, but they need to have it in case something emergency happened that caused you to not be able to complete the exam effectively. They give you that option, but I would say 99% of people won't void your entire exam.
Right,
Also,
thank
I
you.
have a comment I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, yeah.
I just have a comment to add to the void question. So I like Stephanie mentioned, I mean, typically if there's like an emergency or you missed a whole section or, you had an anxiety attack, like something severe that happened, if you really think you need to void it, then go ahead. But if you think that like for me, for my second exam, I was like really much thinking to void it, because what happened for me is I left my ID actually in my locker. And so when I came for the cars section, the lady was like, "Where's your ID?" And I think I was just really nervous. So I like left my ID there, and I missed 4 minutes for the car section. I like came in 4 minutes late. So like the test, if you're not in your seat at the 10-minute mark of your break, your test will start without you. So don't make the mistake I did, because I couldn't sleep for days after. I really regretted it, but I was thinking of avoiding it, but then I wasn't sure. So it's a hard decision to make in that time, but I would recommend, like, if you think, if you were like, oh, I don't know if it went well, but like, if something went wrong and you think you need to void it, like, that's your decision. But if you think you did bad, like no one comes out of the MCAT thinking like, oh, I killed it, like that was so good, or I mean, people do, I don't want to say no one, but like, it's a natural feeling to come out of the MCAT being like, oh man, like I think I messed up, or like, oh man, I don't know how I feel about it. So if you get that feeling at the end of a test, like, or at the end of this test, like, don't think you have to avoid it, because it's a natural feeling to kind of not feel confident, I guess, after your MCAT.
Mm-hmm. All right, and this is kind of what your scoring report will look like. So you will receive a score for each of the different sections, as well as a total MCAT score. And they usually give you the percentile rank. So when you are taking a practice exam, make sure that you look up your top schools that you are interested in attending and see what are they really looking for in admissions, and are you close to that standard. All right, so finding resources. really the resources should be a combination of all of these items. So you don't want to just spend all of your time looking at a study guide. You want to find online videos. You want to find using your textbooks and notes that you took yourself from Bio 1 or organic chemistry. You want to find scientific journals that you can practice timed reading for the cars section. You want to create your own flashcards or find flashcards on Quizlet. Doing practice exams are so important. So make sure that you do have a combination of all these different items. There are a lot of free resources. I know John B mentioned the Khan Academy was great for the psychology section. They do have videos on most science concepts, most physics concepts. So definitely go in there and look through what they have. And I will send that link to your email for those of you that posted your email address. We have a lending library in the Tutoring and Testing Center. So if you come to the Student Affairs building on the second floor, you can check out one of these study guides. So let's say you yourself have the Kaplan series books, but you're just looking for some extra practice questions. You could check out maybe the Princeton Review workout or just the Kaplan 528, which is just practice questions, or the Mometrics, just to get additional practice exams. We do have some older ones as well, but those are our most current ones. You can check out the textbooks for up to 2 weeks at a time. So highly recommend, use us. There are some other really great free resources. The Alvin Sherman Library, you can always rent textbooks. They have additional study guides there. Test prep companies a lot of times will do free practice exams or free like daily questions. So highly recommend to use those. It's just more practice, more help. A lot of times there's student created online note cards. So you can look up those and try to do those like with Quizlet, and then your own class textbook and notes. Did I miss any, John B?
No, I think you got it. Yeah.
All right, so if the car section is the one that's really making you nervous, we do have a reading software in the Tutoring and Testing Center that's designed to increase reading speed and comprehension. Most students find like maybe coming in 1 or 2 times is good for them. If you are getting close to your exam, maybe this is not the best option for you, but if you have some time before you have to take the MCAT, this might be something you want to include in your study plan. Okay, so to create a study plan, really the amount of time people spend preparing for the MCAT varies quite a bit. So whether you spend just a few hours a week or 40 hours a week will really depend on when your exam is coming up, how long that you really planned ahead to take it, and then how much extra practice you need in some of those other sections. So John B, how far in advance did you start preparing for the MCAT?
So for me, it was a little tricky because mine kept getting canceled because of COVID. So I basically started, I started in January, and then I was planning for I did a little bit of content review, and I also work as a tutor at the tutoring center. So, working as a tutor, reviewing a little bit of the concepts was still there. So in that sense, I was kind of still preparing, but I would say like intense preparing, starting practice questions, was in January of 2020. And then I was planning to take my exam May. So like January till May was my plan, but I ended up doing January till it got canceled. So I took it the end of June. So I would say like the first thing that people usually do when they start preparing is content review. So like a little bit of, reading the Kaplan books or the Khan Academy videos, like we mentioned, taking a practice test in the beginning just to see where am I right now? Where are my weaknesses? And then from there, like the MCAT, it's not just a content test. So it's a lot of practice and repetition. So after doing a little bit of content review, really getting in that repetition. And I don't know if we mentioned this UWorld UWorld, I got the subscription for UWorld. That is a really good practice resource. So it's basically this website. I believe it costs around $200 to $300. And it has a lot, I believe it's like almost 2,000 practice questions for all 4 sections. And it's a really good resource for when you want to get into like drilling the practice questions and to supplement your content. So I also recommend, a mistake that I made is when I was getting into the content review, I was just passively reading the Kaplan book, just highlighting like, oh yeah, like KM is equal to this. Okay, cool. But then like, if you're just going to read passively every single day, your brain is going to forget, right? So our brain is wired to remember things better when you apply the knowledge that you've learned. So what I would recommend with that is like with UWorld, or with any practice questions, and even in the Kaplan books, they have like some questions at the end. So every time you will kind of learn something new, or you're like reviewing something, apply the knowledge somehow, because that way it's going to stick in your brain. So that's like my biggest tip for kind of splitting up this study time. Start with the content review, but don't just spend 6 months on just content, because you're gonna forget what you did in the beginning of your studying, right? And you don't want anything to go to waste, because you want every minute to matter. You want to study effectively. And that's also what Stephanie mentioned. Some people study for a month, some people study for 4 months, some people study for 3 years. It depends on how. I mean, I wouldn't recommend studying for 3 years. I would, but it's kind of how you work best. But some people can study in a month. So it's like, it's really how it's more not studying how long you study, it's how effective are you studying. And that's something that I struggled with, to be honest with you guys, because I was doing that passive content review. So super important to supplement with the questions.
Mhm.
I have a question about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm also planning to take it in May, and I started over the winter break, and I did like a whole practice exam too. So now I'm getting into further into my classes, and they're getting more and more involved. I was supposed to study for like about my projected study time is maybe like 5 to 7 hours a week. But this week it's gone down because of like labs and stuff like that. So I'm having to push it to like the weekends now. Did you find that happened to you like during the semester when it really got busy, and how did you like adjust to that?
Right. Good question. I mean, yeah, it's hard to study for this exam when you have classes and everything, but I would say, for me, I think the 5 to 7 hours a week is a good plan. And I would say I would try to wake up a little bit earlier, maybe sleep like, instead of 7 hours, maybe sleep 6 hours, wake up a little bit earlier, in the break times that you do have. So I would try to finish my schoolwork like as soon as possible. Still go to class, still pay attention in class, because you're still a student, right? So, but also at the same time, like when I would come home, I would kind of try to take a little bit of a break and then do a little bit of, practice questions or something every single day. I don't know if you're taking like biochemistry right now, but and a lot of the classes that you are taking in a way are like, you don't think it's MCAT studying, because you're like, it's not like an MCAT book I have open, but it is, if you're taking biochemistry, if you're taking genetics, like you cell molecular, all those classes, a lot of the content is overlapping. So sometimes you are kind of studying for the MCAT without you knowing. So that's also something that I would mention. But I think, like for me, starting my day a little bit earlier, just, taking breaks, and also getting the schoolwork as much as I can out of the way, but, making time every single day. And I think weekends are definitely, like you mentioned, weekends are like a gold for MCAT studying, because you can take a whole practice test on Saturday, or you can, just spend an entire Saturday dedicated to MCAT studying if you're not able to throughout the week. So I think that would be my advice for that. But also don't beat yourself up for it, because you're not a full-time MCATer right now. You have classes, you have 12 credits or 12 to 18 credits, however many you're taking. So it's natural to kind of not dedicate all your time to the MCAT, but try to find a little bit every single day.
Mhm.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you. Mhm.
So, after you buy the Kaplan books, which one do you think would be like the better online practice resource, the Kaplan AA, or no, I'm not sure if it's Kaplan, but the AAMC bundle or the UWorld, because they're both around like the same price.
Right, right. So the AAMC bundle, like what most people will tell you is that that's like because the thing, the AAMC bundle, it comes with full length practice exams, which are the thing is the most replicatable on your actual exam day is going to be the AAMC practice tests. Okay. So the practice exams, and the good thing with that is like, you have the exact same structure as what you will see on your actual exam. So you can get the practice test from Kaplan, you can get practice tests from anywhere else, but the AAMC practice tests are made by the people who are going to make your actual test, if that makes sense, right? So that is like the holy grail. That AAMC bundle is made by the AAMC. Your test is made by the AAMC, so you want that if you can. If your resources allow for that, that is the best. Now, UWorld is good to supplement the content. So like I mentioned, not doing that passive content review, but supplementing the content with the questions. So UWorld is good, but I would say if you have to choose one or the other, I would go with the AAMC bundle, because that has the exams, that has a section bank, that has a question pack, and that has exact content that the test makers are going to make for your test.
When you're thinking of creating a study schedule, it's really important that you write down all of your different time commitments so that you can see what your weekly commitment towards the MCAT will actually be. So if you're saying I want to do 5 to 7 hours now, maybe come March when your classes change, or maybe come closer to the exam, you're going to change that to increase the hours. So really mapping out that time and actually spending that time focused on MCAT studying. So really listing it out so that you actually go ahead and do it. I highly recommend to set up an academic success coaching appointment in order to create that weekly schedule, because a lot of times having an outside person look at your schedule and come up with a plan for you that's more effective but more realistic is very important. And having it written out, it helps you stay more accountable to yourself. So academic success coaching, you can set up an appointment through Navigate. It's the same way that you set up a tutoring appointment. So you'll go to the Tutoring and Testing Center, but just select a coaching appointment. They also can help with goal setting. So what I would recommend is, even though you've blocked off time, set goals for yourself for each of those time blocks. So if you know you have time on Monday to study, that you actually have a plan of how you're going to approach the material. So this is kind of an example of that. If I know I have 6 hours, maybe during the weekend, I know what areas I need to study. I know I'm going to read the sociology textbook that I have. I know I'm going to read these articles. I'm going to watch these videos, but I'm going to also practice these questions. So come study time, you're not looking through your study guide, trying to figure out what do I need to practice? Where do I need to start? You're planning it ahead of time so that when you blocked off time to study for the MCAT, you're actually jumping right into your goals. So the MCAT, it's a very lengthy exam. It's very important that you build up your stamina. So right now you might be studying for 2 hours at a time, 3 hours at a time. But as you get closer to the exam, try to extend that out so you can really build up your stamina and find your pace, find your timing, because it's really important. When you are taking the MCAT, you do have the option right now to take it in the morning or the afternoon. That might change. Originally, it was all seating at 8 a.m., but now I think it's 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. So if you work better in the afternoon, that's when you should study. That's when you should take the exam. If you work better in the morning, that's when you should study. That's when you should take the exam. So when you're most focused, that's when you want to focus your time. Make sure when you're studying, you are switching between the different sections. So you're not just doing chemistry, all chemistry. You're kind of going back and forth, challenging yourself and really kind of forcing yourself to because we learn better when things are challenging, when you are kind of like mixing it up for yourself. I do recommend to do what's called chunking. So it's breaking down all the information. The Essentials Guide actually does this for you. So when you're looking at those individual sections, it'll list out all of the different concepts that will be included in each section. Make sure that you go through that list and that you're actually finding practice questions that relate to that list. Capitalize on your learning style. So if you are a visual learner, writing out your notes or drawing, if you're auditory, finding videos, finding lectures to listen to, recording yourself as you're studying. If you are reading, writing, finding passages to read, finding your old textbooks or your old notes to look through. And then kinesthetic, if you are this type of learning style, making flashcards, making practice quizzes, and really challenging yourself. And really, even though we have a preference of one area, you should be mixing it up each week to kind of create that challenge for yourself. The best way to make these concepts move from short-term memory to long-term memory is repetition and review. So make sure that you're going back to those flashcards again and again. For the ones that you are unsure about, make sure you're addressing those more often. So if you have flashcards that you consistently get wrong, those should be daily things that you need to review. While it's stuff maybe that you know a little bit better, maybe you address it once a month or once a week. That concept is what's called the Leitner boxes. So it's just organizing of how well you know the material. So the stuff that you don't know as well, you want to address more frequently than the stuff that you know better. And then using memory cues. John V, did I miss anything?
Nope, I think you're good. And one more thing I think I mentioned in the beginning, the Anki system. So that's also the repetition and review Stephanie mentioned. You know, you might want to review some certain concepts every single day. So the Anki is something to look into if you guys are interested in repetitive flashcards.
When you are preparing for the exam, as you get closer, it's very important that you're also taking care of yourself. So make sure that you're eating well-balanced meals, that you're not just studying for 6 hours and then realizing, oh, I didn't eat lunch, I didn't drink any water, I didn't sleep. Make sure that you're really taking care of yourself. Sleep is so important for memory and retention. So getting that, 6 to 9 hours of sleep, especially as you lead up to the exam, is very, very vital. Try to have at least one day off a week where you're not studying, you're not focusing on MCAT, you're just enjoying, you're relaxing, recharging. I know that's really hard to do when you're also a student and balancing a lot of other stuff, but try to at least map out, if it's not a day, maybe half a day where you're just like, I'm not going to look at my MCAT material. I'm going to leave it all on my desk. Tomorrow I'll come back. And then at the start of studying, for every 50 to 60 minutes, try to plan a 10 to 15 minute break. As you get closer to the exam, you can kind of extend it out. So then if you start at 50 minutes, then take a break, then 60 minutes the next week, take a break, then 70. You really want to build up your endurance so that you can focus at least 95 minutes at a time, because that's how long the sections are. And then make sure you're enjoying yourself. You're doing something fun. As you, maybe the couple weeks leading up to the exam, you're going to probably feel very overwhelmed, very underprepared. So make sure that you're still doing fun stuff. You're still enjoying life. You're not just focused on this major exam. So positive self-talk is very important. Your attitude towards the exam really can make a difference. So make sure that you're not talking negatively to yourself. Instead of saying, it's too complicated, say, I'm going to tackle it tomorrow from a different angle. Or instead of saying, there's no way I'll do well, just say, let me try these questions again later. let me find help and I'll try it again later. Be encouraging with yourself. Don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to someone else. So practice exams, it's really the best way to gauge where you're at with the material. So highly recommend to take lots of practice exams. Within your first few weeks of study, I would recommend to take at least one practice exam just to kind of see where you're at with everything. Just so you have an understanding of the exam itself as well, how the questions look, and maybe where you need to spend a majority of your time. You can take a practice exam within the testing center. So we have a small lab here in the Student Affairs building on the second floor. So if you're taking a practice exam, instead of taking it at home, where you can get distracted easily, you can schedule it and take it with us. We'll give you a locker for your cell phone, for your belongings. You can do the time limit just like normal. You'll see what a testing center is like when people are coming in and out of the room, or checking your ID every time you leave. So definitely encourage you to get that experience so you can go into test day with like a little more confidence. So there's a lot of places that you can find practice exams. I highly recommend the AAMC. So in addition to the bundle, you can buy them individually. So if you want to maybe spread it out over time and just take practice exam 1, you can purchase that one individually, or you can do it as the bundle that comes with also the other study materials. Most test prep companies offer a free exam. So if you're doing that diagnostic one at the beginning of your study, maybe do one of the free ones then. And then all of the study guides, if you purchase or if you borrow, they'll have a practice exam included in them.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to take the MCAT a year from now, but so I'm like hoping to start studying in the summer. When would be like the best time to take like a practice exam? What do you think?
You're going to plan to take it in January, you said?
Yes, in January of next year, yeah.
All right, so I would say by the end of summer, you should take a practice exam. John V, do you think that would be appropriate?
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. Or if you're starting, you said you're starting studying in the summer?
Yes, that's what I'm planning to do, yeah.
Okay.
Study a few months
So, yeah.
before that.
So I would say honestly, like it's good to take one, before when you start in the beginning phases. So maybe like if you're starting in May or June, like maybe take one in June or something, just to see where you're at. And you can use one of the free, like Stephanie mentioned, there's free practice tests. So you can use one of the free ones just to, see where you're at.
Awesome, thank you.
So when you are taking the exam, it's very important to answer every question. So you don't get penalized for leaving it blank versus getting it wrong. Make sure that you're actually answering each and every question. When you are approaching each question, make sure you understand what the question is really asking. I think John V mentioned this a couple times, like make sure that you understand why those answers are there, but also like what the question is really trying to aim towards. So don't rush through those question stems, because not all true answers are correct. It's not exactly maybe what the question's asking. They will throw answers in there that are designed kind of to trip you up. You can tackle questions in the order you want. So you have the option to mark a question and come back later. If something's taking you a while, skip it and come back later. Time is very, very important as you're taking the MCAT, and it'll go very quickly. So if something's taking too long, don't spend your time on it. Try to go to the questions that you're more confident about and answer those first. Make sure you're keeping track of the questions you've guessed on. So maybe you put a answer down. Make sure you still mark it for review so that you can come back later and look at that question if you have time at the end. And then really the best thing is using the process of elimination. So trying to maybe rank the questions, what's the most incorrect to the least incorrect, because sometimes it'll look like they're all wrong. So kind of approaching it that way. Taking notes on that notepad will really help you visualize your answers. So whether it's a formula, whether it's a concept, just writing it out sometimes will help it click in your memory. All right. So once you get your score for a practice exam, if you'd like to meet with an academic success coach to then kind of create goals that are better designed for what areas you need to focus your time on, I do recommend that same process to set it up through Navigate. So right now we have some practice questions, just a few just for fun. So I'm going to have John B. read the question, and then I'm going to open it up as a poll so you'll have the chance to guess.
Okay, so this is a question you would see on the third section, which is biochem. Increasing the volume of air that reaches the alveoli and takes part in gas exchange will cause blood pH to A, increase because the neural mechanisms that remove blood will be activated. B, increase because the partial pressure of CO2 in the blood will decrease. C, decrease because the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen will be increased. Or D, decrease because the work associated with the increased ventilation will come more O2.
Okay, so we'll give you a chance to guess for that question, and then we'll see what the correct answer is. All right, so let's see. Looks like everyone was in between B and C. And let's find out what it is. So the answer is B. Increasing the volume of air that reaches the alveoli and takes part of gas exchange will exchange O2 uptake and CO2 removal, therefore increasing blood pH. All right, so practice question 2.
Which type of molecule is least likely to be found in a eukaryotic cell membrane? A, phospholipid, B, cholesterol, C, glycoprotein, or D, peptidoglycan?
All right, so majority picked D. So let's see what the answer is. D. So very good. Found in the cell walls of some bacteria, but not in the cell membranes. All right.
So this one is one that you would probably see in the first section, Chem Phys. So positron emission spectroscopy, PET imaging, involves injecting a patient with a positron, which is an anti-electron emitting isotope. The emission of positrons occurs during A, alpha decay, B, alpha absorption, C, gamma absorption, or D, beta decay.
right. So it looks like we were mixed on that one, but the majority said beta decay. So let's see what our results are. D. So the decay which beta particle emitted from heavy atom nucleus. Okay, so the last practice question.
So this is something you'll see in the psych sociology section. A researcher interested in memory of novel words shows participants unrelated words printed on a card, one after the other. Participants see 20 words in total, wait for 2 minutes, and then are asked to write down all of the words they can remember. The researcher finds that 95% of the subjects remember the first 3 words. This finding is an example of A, the recency effect, B, proactive interference, C, the primary effect, or D, retroactive interference.
All right, it looks like the majority said the primary effect, but there is mixed. Sorry. So the answer is C, the primary effect. And you can kind of see this is more of a definition-based question. All right, so what questions do you have for us?
I have a question for Jami. So in the cars section, you said like that was like one of your weaker areas, but like you said, there's a lot of improvement. Well, there's potential for improvement there. I used the Princeton Review, and they recommend like a whole strategy of like going through and like ranking the passages first, and like going through all the answer choices, and then reading the passage, and like trying to identify how to answer the questions. And I did do that on my first 2 practice exams. And the second one, like I barely had like enough time to answer all the questions because like the whole strategy, I was like new to it. But I did pretty well on it. Would you? How did you approach the cars section? Did you approach it similar, or yeah, like you said, like you read like a lot of the passages at first that just took up a lot of your time.
Right. So for cars, the thing is that some people, so I tried almost every single like strategy there is out there. So what I just want to make clear is that different strategies work for different people. So basically that I've heard of that strategy that you're using. So the ranking of the passages, the thing is it helps some people, but at the end of the day, for me, it took up time to rank the passages, right? Because it's like you go through and you're like, okay, this passage is on spiders, and then you're like, do I want to do the spiders one? And then you go to the next one, you're like, okay, this one is on like the World War III, like, oh, maybe I like that a little bit more than the spiders one. Like, you kind of have to make all these decisions on how to like approach which one you want to do first. And I'm an indecisive person, so like that's what I would do. I would sit there and be like, the spiders or World War III, which one should I do? And then it's like you're sitting there and you're like, and for me that took up so much time. So I was like, you know what? I'm cutting that out. I'm just going in order, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just went in the order. Some people do that because some people who are more decisive. So if you're a decisive person, and you're like, okay, World War III, nope. The spiders, yeah, I like, or like if you like a certain passage style and you're able to decide super quickly, like, yeah, I want to do this one first, then go for it. By all means, it's whatever works best with you. And then second part to your question, you were saying that you read the question stem first and then you go back to the passage. So that works for a lot of people. you know, there's people, I was struggling a lot with cars. So I looked up on YouTube, like different strategies different people have. And that is a strategy that works for a lot of people. The thing with me is I would read the questions and kind of like get anxiety. And I'd be like, I should be reading the passage. Like, I would just, I would just get really bad anxiety when I read the questions first. And then I wouldn't even remember what the questions were about when I was going back to the passage. So for me, that didn't work, but I don't want to say that doesn't work for people, because some people swear by this. Like my cousin, he did super well in this section, and he did the exact same thing you're talking about. He didn't rank his passages, but he went to the question stem and then he would go back to the passage. So that worked very well for him. So it's really kind of like, I know this is kind of like a long-winded answer and it's a little cliche, but it's whatever works best for you. Every person is different. So I would recommend, you said you took 2 practice tests, you tried it out that way. I would recommend, you know, you tried it out that way, like now do a couple more passages, try it out the way of reading the passage first and then looking at the questions. You know, maybe that works better for you, but just keep trying different ways. You know, you said you're taking your test in May, so you have time to kind of just explore what works best for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other questions that we can answer before we close out?
I have a question actually. So basically, what I've been kind of struggling with, this is like John, if you could answer this, is that I keep going between content review and practice, because I know like whenever I do content review, like all of December I reviewed over biochem. I took biochem last semester, so I reviewed over winter break. And then, but when I got to like the questions in the biochem passages, like say for UWorld, they're like not as like easy, like as you said, it's not like a, you know, definitions type of exam, it's like an application exam. So then I would get discouraged that, oh, I don't know the content, maybe that's why. And so then I tried doing a different strategy for physics, because I'm not really good at physics. So I was like, you know, I'm just gonna not really review our content, I'm just gonna go do the questions first. But then I found myself when I was doing the UWorld questions, they were like taking me, like it was taking me a while to do one question. And then after that, like one question was over, I would review over why I got it wrong and then kind of retrospectively go back and study. So I don't know which way is better. I personally, when I'm doing content review, I feel like it's like a waste of time, but I know it's not, but still my brain's like, it's a waste of time because you're just gonna forget this, or it's not gonna be asked like in this way for like how it is in the MCAT. So then I kind of find myself at like a roadblock right now. Like, do I like study with the practice questions and then learn retrospectively? Should I study first with the content review with the Kaplan books or Khan Academy and then do practice questions after? Or I just want to try to like figure out the most effective way to study. And yeah, that's kind of like what I've been struggling with lately.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a very common, like, I just want to let you know that that's like, that is this roadblock that you're at. Probably every MCAT test taker was at that roadblock at one point. So like, don't feel discouraged at all. You know, I think the biggest thing with that is, like, I liked what you said, that the content, it's not a direct exam. So the way you study your content, it's not going to be like KM stands for, you know, it's not that friendly of a test, right? So what I would recommend is that, like, and this is a mistake I made early on in my test prep, right? Like I said, I was focusing too much on the passive content review. So I would recommend, like, if you do have the UWorld questions, like every single question has, like, UWorld especially has a really good, like, the responses is probably this big and it has all this, they have images, they have pictures, they have so many, like, it's so easy to kind of read along the UWorld answers, the answer key that they give you. So honestly, at this point, like, if you've touched on like the gist of the content, I would recommend doing the questions, taking notes on the question, like on the content that's given after the question, and then kind of doing it that way, if that makes sense. So like you said, the passive learning, let's make that active learning, right? So how do you do that? You do the questions, you And then if you notice, like, for example, if you said you're not doing too hot in physics, if you notice that under UWorld, you're getting all the fluids questions wrong, for example, then what I would recommend is, keep doing the questions for fluids, read the UWorld explanations, but then go back to your book and be like, okay, like, okay, John V, I need to really review fluids. Like, I clearly don't know what I'm doing and I'm getting them all wrong or something, right? But also getting the MCAT questions wrong does not mean that you don't know the content, because like I said, the way that they ask the question, the way that they, like phrase it, the way that you have to look at the passage, like there's other things that could have gone wrong in answering the question, besides from you not knowing the content, if that makes sense. So, but if you notice a pattern, you're getting fluids wrong, go back to the fluids in your Kaplan book or somewhere, or Khan Academy videos, and watch them, right? So, but I would say only spend a little bit of time. Like, people will tell you spend only a few weeks on like the sole passive content review, and then get into questions ASAP, get into questions as soon as possible. And it's uncomfortable because and the reason that I kept prolonging that, I just kept doing passive content review, because that doesn't ruin your self-esteem. You're just like, I'm just reading this. I know this. Okay, cool. Right. But then when you get to the questions, you're like, oh my gosh, like exactly the roadblock you're going through. Like, do I not know this? Like, what's happening? Why am I getting them all wrong? Why am I spending so much time on them? Oh my God, is this how hard it is? But like Stephanie mentioned, no negative self-talk. It's easier said than done, but like you really cannot get discouraged. Like this test is such a marathon. It's like it is difficult, but you cannot get discouraged, because like once you master how to answer the questions, you'll be fine and you'll do fine. But this is a very common roadblock. So I would say as early as you can, make your prep active rather than passive. Do the questions and then go back to your content.
Okay.
Does that kind of answer that, or?
No, thank you so much. That gave me a lot of reassurance, and that
Okay.
because I felt like, am I the only one who's going through this?
No, you're not. I was in the exact same, me and every single friend that I had that took the MCAT was in the exact same position. So it's a very common feeling that you have.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
One last question. What do you think about like blocking? So you have like 6 months. Like, what do you think about like blocking it into phases? Like phase 1 is like taking that practice exam. Like phase 2 is like reviewing that practice exam. Phase 3 is now going over the content review, and then whatever's next. Like, how would you set that up? Or would that be something to set up with like an academic success coach?
Yeah, I can answer that. So actually, that's a really common way to prepare for the MCAT. So a lot of times at the beginning, you're just devoting more towards content review, practice questions. As you get closer, maybe you're setting specific goals, you're organizing your time more. And then finally, like the weeks leading up to the exam, maybe you're taking a practice exam weekly and you're going through more practice questions than you ever have. So I do recommend to set up an appointment with an academic success coach, no matter what phase you're at. And just know, even though you're setting a weekly schedule, that will change and evolve over time, because yeah, you're going to have exams come up here, or you're going to have involvements that you have to do. But just having set goals will help you be more successful with the time that you do have. So yeah, it's going to happen naturally that those changes will occur.
Thank you.
Any final questions before we log off?
This recording will be sent to our emails, right?
Yes. So we're going to post it on our YouTube channel, but then since I have your direct email addresses, you're going to receive a personalized email. All right, thank you so much for joining us. John V, thank you so much for sharing everything. It was invaluable. So thank you for your time. And I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon, a wonderful weekend, and best of luck in your MCAT preparations.
And if you guys have any questions, I posted my email in the chat. So I'm pretty free now. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.